Here in Washington, we're known for our apples, and Seattle Cider Company is a truly local cidery based in SoDo. Seattle cider is made from fresh-pressed Washington apples, never from concentrate, and there's a new vivid light cider line with crisp flavors like tart apple, juicy pear, bright cherry, fresh peach, wild blueberry, and ripe plum. Those all sound really good. Find Seattle Cider on the web at seattlecidercompany.com to check out the cider lineup, find where Seattle Cider is sold, and view upcoming taproom events. Search for local bars, restaurants, and grocery stores that sell Seattle cider using the Cider Finder on their website. CityCast Seattle is made possible by AT&T. America's first network is also its fastest and most reliable. Based on RootMetrics' United States Root Score Report, 1H 2025. Tested with best commercially available smartphones on 3 national mobile networks across all available network types. Your experiences may vary. RootMetrics rankings are not an endorsement of AT&T. When you compare, there's no comparison. AT&T. This is CityCast Seattle. I'm Jane C. Hu, and here's what Seattle's talking about. Today on CityCast Seattle, we're giving our weekend recommendations, and our state climatologist is explaining what we know about the link between the recent atmospheric rivers and climate change. But first, we're going to start with a story that the South Seattle Emerald broke this week. Here to talk about it is founder of the South Seattle Emerald and Hinton Publishing, and a columnist with The Stranger, Marcus Harrison Green. Welcome to the show, Marcus.
Thank you for having me, Jane. Wish it was under better circumstances.
Yes. And also here to discuss is executive producer Ashley Smith. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get into this story. Multiple women have now alleged that the owner of the community coffee shop, The Station, has harassed them or touched them inappropriately. I actually first saw this blow up on Instagram, and I believe the South Seattle Emerald is the first publication to actually investigate these claims and talk to people about this story. I know it's complicated. Marcus, can you walk us through what we know?
Yeah, Jane. So it was a 2 to 3 week long investigation by our reporter, Lily Fowler. And, there's some other reporters from the Emerald who also contributed to it. To what you said, I and we originally became aware of it on Instagram. And there was a viral post by someone who said that they were the grandniece of Luis Rodriguez, who is the one of the co-owners of the station. She said that he had inappropriately touched her and had said some vulgar comments to her, and that, she was trying to hold him accountable. That sort of elicited other folks to come on and make comments on the post, saying that they had also had some interactions with him that were not appropriate. And so that was honestly the catalyst for us to do a story, in the sense that there were so many people from the community who were, one, either wondering what was going on, or two, wanting to get the bottom of, what was conjecture and what was, what could actually be stated.
I was going to say, for those who are not familiar with it, how would you characterize the role of the station in the community?
Yeah, it's been a community hub for the last, I want to say, going on 15 years. It was particularly in a city where, third places are starting to vanish, that many people found themselves going and finding community with. Like, you could go in there, not have any money, or have, very limited amount of money, find your people, as somebody said in the article. Full disclosure, they had donated money to the Emerald before for our parties. They had donated money to other nonprofits. They had donated their space to places. So, it was definitely seen as this sort of social justice, progressive, forward, looking business. Lily Fowler, who did the piece, ended up interviewing both Louise's spouse, Leona, as well as getting his statements from his grandniece, who originally put forward the allegations, and then also from 3 other women one of whom was previously in a relationship with Louise, and then two other people who were saying that he had been inappropriate with them, whether it was being vulgar or whether it was inappropriate touching. While he denies the claims of his grandniece, he did admit to at times being vulgar and, saying some inappropriate comments and being too flirtatious in his words with women. It's definitely been a tough story for the community in the sense of you have everybody from folks who are saying that they don't want to go to the station anymore to other folks
Mm-hmm.
saying, well, we need to not destroy this business that also employs several people from the community that has been here
Right.
for the community in the past just because of the actions of one person.
I feel like it's been a decade since the initial Me Too reckoning. And I mean, here in town, right? Like, I'm thinking about other cases that have happened over the years, like with Dave Minert, Sherman Alexie. I mean, has anything changed? Like, are there consequences for people? I guess in this case with Rodriguez, I know, he admits to being flirtatious, he admits to having touched a few people inappropriately. Like, what do we make of that? And Ashley, I guess I'm curious to hear from you too, as a woman. Not to be like, hey,
Just as
you're
a
a
woman.
woman. Well, you must have an opinion about this. But I do feel like
Subject matter expert, yes.
Yeah.
unfortunately, a
Um,
lot of us have firsthand experience with this kind of thing. If not, directly, then we know people who have been in these situations. It's like, do you speak up? Do you not?
Yeah, that's the thing is it's always every woman has either heard the whispers if it hasn't happened to them or they know someone. It's just unfortunate that it's kind of always happening. Like you would think like with a progressive group or this like safe community space that you would really hope that in places like that it wouldn't be happening, but the call is coming from inside the house, unfortunately. It's really unfortunate. I mean, always, but especially when stories like this come out of those beloved community spaces that are supposed to be welcoming, supposed to be safe. And for somewhere like the station, if it were to like close because of this, which we don't know. I'm assuming we have no idea. But like if people wanted to go somewhere else, I don't even know if there is a similar place nearby.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I've seen a lot of people go to the, nearby coffee shops, whether it's Victrola in Beacon Hill or Empire Espresso in Columbia City. The station has two locations. One is in Beacon Hill and another is in
Mm,
Columbia City. And I think a lot of folks are just sort of, well, what do we do? What does accountability look like in the sense of holding an individual accountable who has been, such a part of the fabric of the community while also attempting to not, potentially destroy a community business, right? I will say this as, somebody who lives in the South End community, a lot of the conversation, particularly amongst men, have been how have we sort of felt community in the sense of like, were there things we saw or heard that we just, minimized? Were there conversations that we could have had with this individual? Were there things we could have said in terms of that we, implicitly overlooked, right? And that happens every single day. I mean, as you were saying, Ashley, right? I mean, we're talking so much these days about the crisis of men, quote unquote, and yet, this sort of crisis continues to happen with women all the time, right? And it is the thing that, these things may not be criminal, quote unquote, or legal in nature, but right there, they are things that are damaging, right, to and harmful to people
hmm
and to our social fabric. I do know of at least one group without going too much into detail that are, trying to gather community members together to sort of see if there can be some level of repair or restoration and, get to a pathway forward. It's a complicated situation, right? How do you get to a place that everybody within the community, or at least enough people in the community, are going to get to in terms of there being a satisfying resolution? And that's going to be something that takes a great deal of time. So.
hmm
I'm glad men are talking about it
I was going to say the
because,
same thing. Yeah.
well, go off, Ashley.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I feel like we've been saying that or like been begging like dudes to step up because if you see your friend or family member or whoever doing something, if men call out other men, I think more results come from that, or change of behavior, I would hope, than when women say something. And in this case, it's a lot of women saying something.
Yeah, it's like if men are not going to treat women well, they clearly don't respect us. So
Yeah, they're
why
not
would
going
they
to care
listen
how
to
we feel
us?
about it, for sure.
And I hate that it's that way, but I feel like women have been like, please don't harass us or assault us for, as long as there have been people on Earth. And yeah, I feel like men got to call in other men, call them in or call them out, depending on, what the situation is. But I
Yeah.
mean, you were talking about abolition and justice in this situation. It's so tricky, right? But I mean, what do the women in this situation want?
I believe the piece ends with talking to Louise's one of his former partners, and she's asked, what does accountability look like to you? And she was saying a public apology, and possibly this gentleman entering into some sort of alcohol treatment program, because it did seem, at least, and this isn't to excuse anything, of course, that a lot of these incidents happened with while he was intoxicated. And so
But he's denied
you know
having a problem with alcohol. I saw in the piece that he did not feel like he had an issue with it, which that's tricky. I mean, that's a very personal thing too. So I could see,
right.
yeah.
Right, and I think that's the thing about these stories is how do you, obviously he's a public figure in the community, just because of sort of the place that the station, plays within the community. That being said, he's also an individual who has a private life as well. And so how do you sort of walk that fine line between, again, accountability and then also the right to privacy for an individual? And I don't think many people know what is the correct answer to this. We do know that there needs to be something that is done so that our community, so everybody within our community, can feel safe. Ultimately, as in conversing with other men in the community, it's sort of like, this is the time that we, quite frankly, need to shut up as men and just sort of listen to what our, what women and other folks within our community are saying right now. And again, this is something that's not going to be resolved overnight. These are conversations that need to be ongoing, quite frankly, because, even, I think as the Me Too movement has showed, you could argue that there unfortunately wasn't a lot of sustained accountability for folks. I mean, you have people like Louis C.K. who continues to tour and be just fine, quite frankly, financially, after multiple women came out about his harassment of them. And so I will say I am hopeful that at least in this particular instance within our community, there are folks, again, working on hopefully some sort of pathway towards healing and repair and reconciliation. That being said, that's something that happens over the course of months and years.
I think it will be a long road, and I'm sure this is not the last that we have heard of this larger conversation. Men, get your shit together. And I commend the women who have, at great peril to themselves, come forward to talk about this, because I know that is not easy. All right, let's leave it there for now. And when we come back, we have a conversation with our state climatologist, Guillaume Manger. I've been making a point of getting out and visiting or revisiting spots that I don't go to every day in town. So this weekend, a friend and I did a little downtown outing, like we got lunch in Pioneer Square, and then we made our way to the Seattle Art Museum, one of Sam's 3 locations. Sam's collection is wonderfully curated. I've always appreciated how much care they've put into giving museum goers context about artists and how their work represents a moment in history. And right now they've got this special exhibit that I feel like really exemplifies that. It's called Farm to Table, and it explores the role of French Impressionist art in capturing the late 1800s culinary scene in France. There were pieces by well-known artists like Monet and Renoir, but the pieces that spoke to me the most were by some lesser-known artists that depicted like farming, still lifes of food spreads, or tables of people eating. And And it got me thinking about how what we eat, with whom we dine, and where that food comes from is always a reflection of wealth, class, and the current moment. Anyway, I highly recommend going to check it out. You can learn more about the exhibit and get tickets at visitsam.org/farm. Hey Liam, what are you doing for New Year's?
Hi, Jane. I haven't narrowed it down yet, but I'm thinking a nice dinner, but I need some activity to occupy my rambunctious children.
Ooh, okay, I have just the thing for you. I feel like I'm so bad about making plans in advance, and so I just end up paying a ridiculous amount of money to get into a bar.
Yes.
But I heard that Argosy is doing New Year's Eve cruises, and they have one that is an all ages fireworks cruise. It leaves from either the waterfront downtown or South Lake Union. And they also, I guess if you want to leave your kids at home, there's a 21 plus party cruise.
Sign me up for that one. That sounds great.
Yeah, sounds like a fun way to ring in the new year, right?
It does.
All right, well, there are limited seats for New Year's Eve sailings, so you can book on argosycruises.com if you want to firm up your plans before December 30th. The recent atmospheric rivers have led to historic flooding in Western Washington, and we had questions about what this means for the region long term, especially as climate change means more extreme storms. So, we have with us today Washington state climatologist Guillaume Marget to ask him some of the big questions this catastrophic series of storms have brought up for us. Welcome to the show, Guillaume.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's turn to what's happening currently. Some flooding is inevitable, right? Floods just happen. And I know people often characterize flood severity by how often that magnitude of storm is expected to hit. So, people talking about a 25-year flood, a 100-year flood. What was this one? What are we looking at right now?
So it really depends on where you're looking, and we don't have the final numbers on that quite yet. The one place where I've done the most recent work and I'm most familiar is the Skagit River, which is the biggest river in Western Washington. And there it was just under a 25-year event.
Okay.
So big. That's a big event, right? On average, only every 25 years. But it's not, for instance, the FEMA maps. Those are keyed to the 100-year event, right? So that'd be an even bigger event.
Mm-hmm. So I know also that it's difficult to attribute the effects of climate change to any single weather event. I know there's such thing as attribution science, but what is the role of climate change in flooding in this region? How do scientists figure that out?
Another way of thinking about this is, do we have direct or circumstantial evidence for the effects of climate change on these events? And mostly we have circumstantial evidence. So the big things that I would point to are, we have less snowpack. That's one of the most obvious effects of warming. It's well documented. It's happening already. It's projected to accelerate in the future. And that's important for flooding because if you get the same amount of precipitation, the proportion of that's rain increases with less snowpack, right? You get less snow, more rain. If you get rain, that can go straight into the river and cause a flood. So we expect there to be a clear link between that loss of snowpack and flooding. But it's circumstantial evidence because we know that there's a loss of snowpack. We haven't tied that systematically to what does that mean for flooding.
What would direct evidence be?
Yeah, so I think there's direct observational evidence. So just looking at, we have stream gauges all across the region, looking at if the peak flow events are going up over time. And there are some locations that do show an increasing trend like you'd expect. So for instance, on the upper Skagit, the Sauk River is a major tributary. That one's showing an increasing trend. On the other hand, if you look statewide across a bunch of river gauges, and USGS did a study on this in 2017, a lot of them are not statistically significant trends, and they don't even all go in the same direction, right? The other direct evidence would be these attribution studies you're talking about. Fundamentally, what you're doing is you're running a model that simulates the event that actually happened, and then you're rerunning that model and somehow removing the effects of climate change. So, it's not as warm as it is today. We're imagining there were no additional greenhouse gas emissions. The sea surface temperatures aren't as warm, so on and so forth, right? And then what does that look like? And then you compare the two. And often it's not just two simulations, it's like thousands because you're trying to capture all of the uncertainties.
Right.
And we don't have a lot of studies that have looked at flooding that way in our region. There's actually one out of British Columbia that looked at the 2021 floods on the Nooksack River. And that one found that the event was made 2 to 4 times more likely due to climate change.
Well, it seems like, as climate change continues, as greenhouse gas emissions also continue, we're probably just going to continue to get more and more of these types of storms. And I think in this storm in particular, what was highlighted was the fact that our infrastructure is not impermeable, right? Like we've got levees, we've got dams that help control some of the flows. We saw 2 levee failures, and I know, a lot of our dams are aging. Folks were kind of nervous that at least one of the dams might experience too much pressure if the flows were adjusted to try and help those river levels. So it's tricky. I mean, I guess moving forward, what do you think, as state climatologists here, about how we should be thinking about the future? Like, should we be investing more money in that infrastructure to constantly fix it, even if it's just going to get messed up every few years? Should we just not be building in a floodplain? Like, what does the future look like?
Yeah, so I think you did a good job there of summarizing that there really isn't necessarily a panacea here. And even in those cases where there are some of these concerns, like you were saying about dam safety or levee soundness in flood conditions, their ability to withstand floods, I should say, it differs from place to place what the concerns are, right? So I often work with folks who are in floodplain management and have learned a lot from them, right? But that there's a lot of details in what you're asking that I can't answer, right? And in part because I don't have that expertise, but also in part because it is a question that the community needs to weigh in on, right? So there are places where I think the right answer probably is to beef up the levees, right? And there are other places where the right answer is to maybe pull those levees back and give the river a little bit more room, right? And maybe, there's places where the right answer is to remove them entirely. I don't know. I don't see a lot of examples of that in inhabited places, but that may be the case, right? And again, I think that's a discussion to have with the community. And that's just to mention the levees, right? And probably all of those conditions exist in every single watershed in different degrees, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's what we do in our work, right? Like we try to have those conversations with folks. And I think of those conversations as like a two-way, right? Like where I have a lot to learn about how things work for them. And that also allows me to know what kind of information to bring that helps them make their decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm curious what other downstream effects that you and your colleagues or folks that you all work with, community partners, people working on this from all different aspects, are anticipating and talking about right now that the general public might not be thinking about yet? Like, what are we not thinking about in terms of the bigger picture recovery and future here?
Great question. I think that even on the most basic level, just having greater awareness out there about what the risks are would be incredibly valuable, right? And so, for instance, there are these famous pictures of people walking their dogs on levees, right? When the water level is like a foot below the top of the levee, which is crazy because if you know anything about what that looks like when they overtop, it's really violent, and or when they fail, because they don't always have to overtop to fail, right? So I think there's just a really basic level of awareness that would be really valuable. And then, on top of that, my piece, right, of course, is we're seeing that these risks are increasing in the future, right? We expect the floods to be bigger and happen more often. And my concern is that, what we're going to get to rapidly in some of these places is a situation where these big catastrophic floods that take a long time to recover from are happening often enough that communities don't have time to recover, right? And so just to give you an example, there's a great study on the Skagit River that found that today's 100-year event is going to be happening, it's going to be more like a 20 to 25-year event by the middle of this century, right? And
the moving goalposts are wild.
Yeah. And what a lot of studies find that the catastrophic floods, sometimes that's a 100-year event, that takes a community like 2 to 3 decades to recover from. So if it's coming back every 20 to 25 years, you don't have time to recover, right? And that is, to me, sounds like it could be a tipping point, right, for viability in some of these cases. So that's the concern, right? People live with flooding in lots of places. We can learn to live with it, but we have to plan ahead, right? And that's the thing that I want to help people do.
That brings up another thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately, which is I think people often reference the Pacific Northwest as a type of almost climate refuge. Like,
Hmm.
we're talking a lot more in this region about what it might look like as more people try and come here if their homes are becoming uninhabitable from heat and drought. How does this kind of weather impact Seattle or Washington's status as this region that might be more quote unquote climate safe?
I mean, there are so many problematic things about that perception. It's not totally wrong. Like, we live in a mild climate, but it's so much more nuanced than that, right? And the flooding is a good illustration of that. You mentioned drought as well, right? And even though everybody thinks of the Northwest as super wet, of course, that only really applies west of the Cascades.
Right.
On top of which, even west of the Cascades, we have pretty dry summers, right? And those are projected to get drier in the models. I think the other piece that I find problematic is that it's kind of a privileged perspective to think that people can just decide where they live. And in fact, people, for lots of good reasons, live in lots of places, and their reasons are rarely due to the climate in that place, or that's not the top reason in many cases, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess speaking of drought, how are we doing? I know that we obviously just got a huge amount of rain, but I know that doesn't not necessarily put a dent in whatever drought areas of our state might be in. I know that also we were not getting snow until very recently. It looks like we might now have some blizzard conditions in the mountains, but yet where are we on all that right now?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because most people, understandably, are not thinking about drought this time of year. But it is, the last 3 years have had declared drought emergencies in the state of Washington. Some parts are a lot farther behind than others. When I did look the last time, we were far enough behind that the rain events that had hit us so far had not caught us up, right? There's a substantial deficit. It's a confusing thing to talk about this time of year, right? Because we do have plenty of water. The plants, the ecosystems, they have plenty of water, right? It doesn't really become an issue until summer. Um, there are two good news things to say about this year right now. One
We
is
could
that,
all use some good news, yes.
yeah. I mean, so one is that, like, actually it's kind of a good thing that there wasn't a lot of snow in the mountains before we had all this rain. It's a weird thing, but like, once the snow covers the ground, it can absorb more water, right? And so if you have really dry ground that then you get snow over, that snow melt just goes straight into the ground. It doesn't come into the rivers during the snow melt season, right? But if you saturate it first and then it freezes for the winter and then thaws, you've effectively stored more water up there, right? So that could actually add a little bit. And then the other thing is, we are super late in our snow this year, right? Everything but the highest elevations is basically zeroed out right now. And maybe this blizzard later in the week is going to help. Depends on what forecast you're looking at, but it looks pretty positive. But it's still early, right? A lot can happen between now and the end of winter, when we typically peak in snowpack. So it's not over yet.
Yeah. And I mean, fingers crossed that things right themselves, but I don't think that any of the current data suggests that that's magically going to happen until we make some pretty big changes in the world.
I think there's been a lot more work on broadening the toolbox of strategies that are used to address flooding risks. So, for instance, I have a collaborator at the Tulalip tribe who is looking into upland forest management and what it might do to help hold back floodwaters. And another collaborator who actually is now starting her own company to look into doing this, that looks at wetland restoration, right, which can also help sort of hold back floodwaters by storing them on the landscape. And actually, our new director here has done a lot of work on how forest management can affect snowpack, like both development and retention of the snowpack. And actually, where we've really seen the benefits is more in the, like, giving the river more room to roam kind of realm, which can also slow the flow and spread the peak, to sort of bring back an old COVID term. One of the challenges with flooding is that what you do at your location is going to affect people, especially downstream, sometimes a little bit upstream even as well, right? So there's this connectivity that you have to consider. You can't just think about your community, you have to think about the whole watershed. And that's starting to happen, which wasn't happening before. So it's another reason for optimism, I think. And it's not always leading to easy conversations, right? Because often it's like one person's priorities are in conflict with another's, but it's at least leading to those conversations, which is a step in the right direction.
Guillaume Maget, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
And when we come back, we'll be talking with Ashley Marcus about their recommendations for the weekend. And we're back with Ashley and Marcus for our weekend recommendations. But first, I want to ask you all to weigh in on this new segment we're going to do here called the Dahlia. It's named after the Seattle flower. It's like a rose and thorn situation, except only the rose part. And I want you all to shout out something good that happened this week, something delicious you ate, some business that you think is just really killing it. Marcus, what is your Dahlia of the week?
I would say the Athenian restaurant over in Pike Place Market. So the film Sleepless in Seattle,
Yes.
A part of it was obviously filmed in Seattle. And the restaurant that Rob Reiner and Tom Hanks go to, the two to the protagonists in the film, is actually the Athenian. And in the Athenian restaurant, I think since that movie was filmed, they have little plaques that say Rob Reiner said here and Tom Hanks said here. And so I want to give a shout out just because of, Rob Reiner, who obviously was tragically killed this week along with his spouse. The guy just created so much joy and so much great art within the world, whether it was A Few Good Men, Harry Met Sally, and, this is Spinal Tap and Spinal Tap 2 that just recently came out. So just a shout out to the Athenian for continuing to commemorate, him and his work.
Yeah. I feel like friends, whenever they're in town, always want to go to the Athenian if they know it, because it's like, oh, that's where that scene was filmed. But
yeah, it's like an iconic piece of Seattle media history, movie history. Very cool.
Yeah. What about you, Ashley? What's your Dahlia of the week?
Ooh, I think one hasn't happened yet, which would be, I've mentioned this before, but this is the week that my friends and I do Hanukkah dinner together, and that's coming up on Sunday. So I'm super excited to eat my weight in latkes. But also I wanted to shout out Bazaar Brewing, one of my favorite breweries. They're in Magnolia. It's where I love to do trivia on Tuesdays. And they just celebrated their third birthday, and I actually ran into them at Cornelli and Queen Anne just having dinner, and they had this big 3 balloon. And it's hard out there starting your own business, starting your own brewery, so the fact that they're turning 3 is a pretty big deal, and yeah, they deserve a shout out.
Yeah, third birthday. That's like if they were like a human, that'd be like toddler walking around, can talk. Yeah, that's like a full person at that point. That's a good milestone.
And truly, they would be of age to drink in dog years, I guess, right? 3 times 7, 21. So congrats to them.
All right. My Dahlia is, I want to shout out WashDOT. Like, they are having a hell of a time. Like, This has been a week. Of course, the people who are directly affected by the flooding are the people that I have been thinking about the most, but I feel like seeing some posts from WashDOT this week, really keeping us informed and knowing how hard their crews are working. I saw a very funny Instagram post from them that I think was still a very good public service announcement, being like, guys, we're not mad, we're just disappointed. Like, don't go around the signs that say road closed. Like, it's for your own safety. Like, please just don't. And I've always just appreciated the tone and also the quickness with which they are keeping us informed. So shout out to them. I'm sure that they've had a couple of long weeks here.
For sure.
What about, what are you guys up to this weekend? Anything you recommend checking out, going to do?
I think I'm just going to keep it very cozy, particularly with the weather. So I'm going to head to the library with a couple of friends, the Seattle Downtown Library, which I know people still crap on the architecture of the building, but
it's beautiful.
My favorites.
It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, but I've been corrected recently about how ugly it is. But anyway, neither here nor there. But I'm gonna go just have a mini readathon with some friends, and we're going to read for 2 hours straight and then discuss what we're reading. So, we're
Yes,
gonna nerd out
please.
over books.
What are
Nice.
you reading?
It's by Cory Doctorow and it's called Enshittification.
Oh
Oh,
So
nice.
it's
yeah. That's a peak pick at the library right now, at least in my branch.
Yeah, definitely. I actually went to an independent bookstore, shout out to Third Place Books, and purchased it. So,
Yes.
Oh,
Doing
nice.
the Lord's work, Marcus. Yes, good
doing my
job.
best. Doing
Yes.
my best.
All right, Ashley, what are you up to this weekend?
Besides Hanukkah dinner, I think I'm going to be spending a lot of time also just kind of being cozy inside my home. I want to get back into knitting over our winter break that we're taking from work. And so instead of doom scrolling, I'm going to go buy a bunch of yarn at my local yarn shop, Tea Cozy Yarn Shop here in Ballard,
Ooh,
and knit some stuff over the weekend, I
nice.
think.
Love that. I'm going to try and stop by the Green Lake Bathhouse Theater. They're doing a very Die Hard Christmas. And
Nice.
Oh,
every year it is sold out. It is so sold out every year that I just usually give up. But this summer they were doing another hilarious parody play called Jurassic Parking Lot. And I just showed up like an hour before the show and got on the wait list. This was like on a Saturday night or something. And I was like, what are my chances? Like, am I actually going to get in and like get tickets? And they were like, yeah, like a lot of the time people do actually get in. So I think that's going to be my plan for this too. If you're also one of those people who's also heard about a very diehard Christmas and has always wanted to go, but has never been able to get tickets because they sell out like the minute that they are available for purchase, maybe you too can try this waitlist trick. I mean, I figure like there's so many great restaurants in Green Lake that even if you put your name on the wait list and you don't get into the play, like, I mean, worst case scenario, what? Like you walk around Green Lake for a little bit and you get a delicious bite to eat somewhere. Like it doesn't seem so bad. So,
Yeah, win-win.
all right. Well, I hope you all both have very cozy weekends. It sounds like that's what's on dock for you.
Mm-hmm.
And listeners, I hope you all also have a lovely weekend. Marcus, thank you so much for joining us today as well.
it was a pleasure. Thank you, Jay.
And Ashley, thank you for weighing in.
Always.
That's all for today here at CityCast Seattle. I'm your host, Jane C. Hu. Our executive producer is Ashley Smith. Our creative producers are Sam J. Leeds and Liam Billingham. Our prince of social media is Ben Keenan. And if you want to hear your ads on CityCast Seattle, get in touch with Ryan Fitzgerald. Post-production this week was done by PJ Shahamat. Music is by Aaron Taylor Waldman, All the Kimonos, and Los Mocochetes, with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. Our ad music is by Sven Lindvall and Sarah the Instrumentalist from Epidemic Sounds via Getty Images. And listeners, we want to hear from you. Send us your news tips, your hot goss, or any burning questions you have about our city by sending an email to seattle@citycast.fm, and we'll do our best to answer them on the show. You can also text us or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast hotline at 206-880-3931. You can get more local news and events delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter. Just go to seattle.citycast.fm. And if you're enjoying the podcast, follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. And leave us a little review. It's really helpful. Until next week, see ya, Seattle.